I'ma do the dab, yeah.
Dr. Cavil, he know what he be talking about. Mike and Charles, they know what they be talking about. They compress the analytic data with this hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna law, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson. And you gon' learn today, how your team they play, how they play, boy. You gon' learn today, how your team they play, how they play, yeah. We represent that swag, that MEAC, and let me say, what's up to Tennessee, stay. Tune into the HBCU Sports Lab with Dr. Cavil, Mike and Charles.
Welcome to Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Welcome to episode 81 of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab radio show and podcast. The show that is covering sporting HBCU diaspora, all things HBCU sports. For institutions large and small, from NAIA to NCAA, we share insights and information on the HBCU sports culture, HBCU athletic aesthetics to facilitate the story of HBCU athletic programs and the business of HBCU sports. I'm your host, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, along with my co-hosts, Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. We're filming from our home studios and sending a signal live to KCOH 1230 AM studios with the Texas Radio Hall of Famer, Ralph Cooper, in beautiful home of Texas Southern University from Houston, Texas. Today's episode of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab is sponsored by THG Agency. THG Agency is a company that provides sporting and education consulting and data analytics. Today's show will feature a voice of HBCU student Isiah Thornton from Texas Southern University, talking about his college experience, dealing with COVID-19 pandemic and other HBCU news of the week, as we'll give you that information so you get a little more about what that interview is about as we continue to bring you more and more information. But without further ado, let me bring in my co-host of the show, and as I've told y'all over the years, that is none other than Professor Washington, Professor Charles Bishop. Yes, as I am the Dean of HBCU College of Sports and bring it to you. As you see, I have a little love for Howard University. This is old school now. This goes back to the Black Five before Howard actually had an athletic program. They were still just a little doozy there. Just make sure everybody see that. I'm gonna put that up there just real nice. That's a classic, buddy. Then I got my towel on in terms of what's going on. So we'll get in a little bit of that, a little more. But before we get into that news in regards to what I'm doing with this towel, what you all are doing with this towel, along with why I have this Howard University old school jersey on, we'll talk about that, and we'll have a little introduction video that will explain that a little more before we get into that. Before I do that, though, I would like to say, Mike, how are you doing today?
Pretty good. Well, glad to be back after my absence last week, Doc and CB. You know, the hurricane and the trifecta of the hurricane and COVID-19 and chemical plants, and it was just a hectic last week. So glad to be back amongst friends and family. So I appreciate it.
No problem, and glad to have you back. And with that, let's go to Professor Charles Bishop. Charles Bishop, how you doing,
Dr. Cavil? Doing well.
Doing well.
I'll tell you what, it was a tough weekend with everything that was going on and an eventful past Monday here. So we'll get into it. There was a lot going on. So we'll get into it.
Heavy burdens on my heart after this past weekend, for sure. So,
no doubt.
Yeah, with that saying, I think you're appropriately saying that this was continues to be a hard year, really. This weekend was especially hard for many people of different frameworks, as we alluded to, and we'll have a way to honor that. We're going to bring up Chadwick Boseman's speech, the first part of it in terms of Howard University 2018 commencement speech. We now know that when he gave the speech, he was actually diagnosed 2 years into his battle, essentially when he was diagnosed with colon cancer, essentially in regards to what was going on. And when you look at that speech, you start to ask your question, was he talking not to just those students? Obviously he was, but it looked like he had some introspective framing that he was talking to himself as well. It was dynamic. We'll play
Absolutely.
one at the beginning and one at the end. We'll kind of open it up, which will give you some background on why this may resonated for so many people. For me, as I put my hands up in terms
No
of,
doubt.
as we all know now,
Yeah.
Wakanda, which obviously is a fictional place, which a lot of folks, but for those like myself that are big comic book fans, long time ago, this was another way you get back to that information and seeing how that goes on. But also in regards to that, the deeper spin was that for me, you all know that I have a 6-year-old son. So it was the first time I got to go to a movie with him where he got to see an image of somebody in that framework that looked like him, that had that Africana diaspora framework, you know. And you could tell instantly the way he was into the movie. I could see that it meant a great deal to him. So it really reverberated around me for a different while. And somebody texted me and asked me that question, how was Dukes? And I didn't even tell him. I couldn't really tell him. I don't do that kind of stuff. But my wife, she is functional about all that stuff. And she told him. And he couldn't quite grapple with understanding. How could he know he's not here and he's understood death? But how could he not be here and he's on the screen? Because they had the show that that night, Friday night, Saturday night, when we heard all that, and he was watching it. So that was shaking me up. So I did a lot of stuff. So without further ado, if you would, great super producer Roy Evans, go ahead, play the video, if you would. We're going to play again. We'll set this up. This is Chadwick Boseman at Howard University's 28th commencement speech. This is President Frederick for Howard University doing the introduction. So check this out, and hopefully it resonates with you as much as it did with me.
Chairman Stacey Mobley, please present the Speaker, Mr. Chadwick Boseman.
Let's do this. Mr. President, I have the honor to present Mr. Chadwick Aaron Boseman to receive at your hand the honorary degree of Doctor of Humane Letters.
Chadwick Aaron Boseman, quintessential artist, actor, director, writer, your unique ability to completely embody the characters you chose to portray on screen and stage has created a phenomenal global sensation in the world of film and entertainment unlike any in recent history. Beginning with your work in the film 42 in 2013 as the legendary Jackie Robinson, who broke the color line in Major League Baseball by signing with the Brooklyn Dodgers at a time in America when blatant racism was rampant. And I told Chadwick last night that Jackie Robinson and Martin Luther King Jr. received honorary degrees on the same day right here at Howard University as well. To your exquisite, true-to-life depiction of the Godfather of Soul, Mr. James Brown in the film Get On Up, and in 2017, your brilliant role in Marshall, which you co-produced, about the iconic civil rights lawyer and first African-American Supreme Court Justice, fellow Capstone alumnus Thurgood Marshall, you have blazed a powerful new path in the world for the presentation of our rich lives of triumph over adversity that have been so sorely ignored for centuries. In this blockbuster year of 2018, audiences and critics around the globe have heralded your magnificence as T'Challa, Black Panther, in the feature film of the same name, and the entire movie has set afire in the hearts and minds of people of all colors, creeds, and races, the likes of which has never been seen before. You said that you had written in a journal years ago your desire to be the Black Panther. The world is in worship of Wakanda, the fictitious, technologically advanced, and mineral-rich African nation ruled by the Black Panther, who is based on a Marvel Comics character which debuted just over half a century ago. Also in 2018, you reprised your role of T'Challa Black Panther in Avengers Infinity War, which is the fastest film ever to pass $1 billion globally. You came to alma mater as an undergraduate of T.L. Hanna High School in your hometown of Anderson, South Carolina, where you were reared in a loving, supportive home by your mother Carolyn and father Leroy Boseman. Having written and performed plays in your junior year, your focus was initially on directing, and you earned a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree in directing in 2000. You were fortunate to have taken classes from the acclaimed Felicia Rashad, who raised the funds for you and fellow classmates to attend the British American Drama Academy in London. While your plan was to hone your talents as a writer-director, it was your exposure to Rashad's teaching that opened you to the fruits of acting as well. Settling in New York, you began your career teaching drama at the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture in the Junior Scholars Program in Harlem in 2002. You landed your first television role on Third Watch in 2003 and had a series of other roles on CSI, New York, Law and Order, and ER, to name a few. While continuing to write plays, you felt it was possible to do it all despite your agent pressing you to choose one artistic area of focus. Ultimately, you did see the value in this advice, even though you had success with Deep Azure, based on the tragic true story of Howard alum Prince Jones, who was murdered by a Prince George's County police officer. Your decision to move to Los Angeles in 2008 opened the way for more achievements, as with your role in the television series Lincoln Heights, then your first feature film, The Express, and a regular role on Persons Unknown in 2010. Other films included The Kill Hole, released just before 42, in which you starred opposite Harrison Ford, Draft Day with Kevin Costner in 2014, and Gods of Egypt, in which you played Thoth. Chadwick A. Boseman, beloved son of alma mater, your dedication to excellence, your pioneering, indomitable spirit, and motivated commitment to your craft stands as the hallmarks of your incredible life and career. You are a shining exemplar of our cherished core values of leadership, excellence, truth, and service. It is with heartfelt respect and loving gratitude that we salute and honor you as orator on the historic occasion of our 150th commencement, conferring upon you the degree Doctor of Humane Letters, honoris causa. Congratulations.
So again, just wanted to give some people some background, and I thought who better to do it than a president of a HBCU. In this situation was Dr. Frederick, president of Howard University. Just when I was reading and you heard so many different people talking about it and worked with him, obviously it was amazing to me here. Ta-Nehisi Coates, another great writer of Howard University, was there at the same time. And you'll get even more into the speech as we get to close and give you an update. But I thought it was appropriate to a way that we could honor him in regards to connecting him to that greater sporting HBCU diaspora, especially when you start talking about that he played, you know, the role of Jackie Robinson when we talked about the contextual framework of what does that mean and what has it done. To me, mostly positive, obviously some concerns in terms of when you look at whether it was integration or desegregation, some context that you could go there. But just wanted to bring him to life in a way about that. And we'll actually hear directly from him later in the show. So with that, you kind of explain your thoughts on that. And we'll do this back together. So we talk about in a lot of ways also John Thompson Jr., the coach of Georgetown. And for us, I would imagine, and we haven't even talked about this, so I hope I'm not out of turn, but growing up as a little African-American boy, Black American, whichever term that you want to talk about in terms of the diaspora, and seeing somebody when you're a fan of sports, and contextually you trying to wrestle with all these different issues, and many of us have come to what it means in terms of diversity, equity, racism, ethnicity. We've seen that in so many different ways in terms of what does that mean for us in the platform of the HBCU landscape, and just being, again, African-American, Black men, Black Americans in this country. When you see John Thompson, you talk about the fact that some of us may not even realize but when they came out with the Kente cloth jerseys later on, and just the way he represented, the way that team played, we were just getting in the area of hip hop, and so much of hip hop were adorning different jerseys, and many of them were representing HBCUs, blacker the knowledge, sweeter the college. Those kind of phrases were out there. The connection with HBCUs, the connection with the Black Power movement, reignited in so many different ways. The garb and what did that mean, and the way that he referenced that, and the way that he fought the NCA for different rights that he believed for young African men. We got John Thompson, and he lost his battle obviously with life, and that's why we're representing with the towel there. And you may say there's no direct connection in terms of HBCU, but we're everywhere and we're everything, and there is a connection. Shout out to Stephen Gaither as he does it again, HBCU Gameday, and he reached back in the archives and talked about Coach Thompson, I'll call him, in regards to his relationship he had with CE Big House Games. And a particular quote that he put in there that resonated with me, where he said, where he really gets in and reflect to me my feelings about being the first black coach to be in the Final Four. I resent that. To tell you the truth, I resent the question because I think the question is very misleading. Thompson said in 1982,
Yep.
that implies that I was the first person that was competent, which is misleading statement.
Absolutely.
Gaither adds in there that you probably could hear a pin drop in that media room, and you're probably right. People are like, what is this? Quote, I think
Very
that when you are
intimidating.
talking about the first black, you better be careful because I think that it's the biggest insult my race can have. There have been several people far more qualified, far more competent than I am, that I've been denied the right and opportunity in this country to be here. And a lot of that was attributed just to what he knew, what he was doing in terms of climbing that mountain. And he knew he was standing on the shoulders of giants. And we heard that, and we'll hear that from Chadwick Boseman. But he always talked about the fact with CE Big House Games, which we know as our legendary coach who won a championship at the NCAA level, it was Division II in 1967. And you have a lot of people putting out there that John Thompson won the first, as a black coach, first tournament, and that's not technically correct. He did it at the Division I level, and we have a way in this country oftentimes when it's not black space that we other it, and that's what you see here in this case, that we forget the legendary coaches, John McClendon and what he did at Tennessee A&I, some Division II coaches, Division III coaches, in terms of what they did for men's and women's in regards to their history, that is important, that we need to put out there in regards to what's going on here, that I think is extremely important in so many different ways. So I just wanted to bring that to the table in terms of what that means, in terms of the landscape and different frameworks in so many different ways. Lemoyne College in 1975 won the NCAA Division II coach Kerry Johnson. Dr. A.J. Stovall of Rust College, Lady Bearcats in 1984 NCAA Division III NAA national title. So several titles, Kentucky State with their 3 NAIA championships, to talk about coaches that did this vanguard, if you would, before that. And it's not even to mention that decade where HBCUs dominated championships at the NAIA landscape, opening up with a championship by Tennessee A&I, which includes championship with Prairie View, and then Grambling. And the other ones came along the line and won championships in basketball at that time, closing in 1977 in a lot of ways of that era, great renaissance of HBCU basketball with none other than Coach Moreland of Texas Southern University. I would be remorseful if I didn't bring that to the table and bring up. But just wanted to give proper context to the folks that put it up there. So wanted to do that, and I thought it was appropriate in a lot of ways to tie this in a big bow. You see me with my Nigerian design wardrobe I've had here when I actually got to travel to Nigeria and Abuja. So for me, it's real in regards to the context of understanding the diaspora and what it means. So, I speak it and live it because I've had those opportunities. Enough of me in terms of that, but I wanted to open up and give a chance for that. We're getting ready for our guests shortly. But I did want to give a chance for Professor Mike Washington to jump in here and kind of add his context of what he thinks of all of this.
Yeah. So kind of something that knots up in the back of your throat. When you think of John Thompson, I guess for me personally, you could, Dr. Cavil, you said it, although it wasn't an HBCU, he may as well been the way he coached, the way he cared for his players. And I remember in the early '80s, you if you know me, you know that my parents were very passionate about HBCU sports. But we watched Coach Thompson, as my uncle would refer, Big John, and I can still reverberate his words. Come on here, Big John, because he didn't play. And it's no secret, it's no surprise that 94% of his players played for 4 years and got a degree. That's untold of in today's day and age. He cared for his play. I still remember the game where he walked out, took his team out when there was a sign posted by the students, predominantly white, that said he cannot read, talking about Patrick Ewing. He took his team and walked out until the authorities had them remove the sign because he didn't appreciate any disrespect to his players whatsoever. I remember the game because we would watch the game adamantly. My folks were a Big John favorite. Coach Thompson, as everybody affectionately and refers to him, but my folks referred to him as Big John, and he was going to protect. I remember the day the sports reporter on 60 Minutes said that he got in a car, went for an interview, and he actually went to a drug dealer and actually said, "You will not touch my players." So that was the type of man that Coach Thompson was. So although I'd never met this person, he was a figure larger than life. He was a coach's coach. So to me, we should celebrate him affectionately, across the lands. But he meant so much to African American males playing the sport of basketball, but better yet, serving as a college athlete. If you look at that, 94% of his folks went 4 years and graduated with a degree. I don't know if there's many coaches, white, black, Hispanic, that can say that. So that means a lot. And his passing, although he lived a full life, it means a lot, and it brought lumps to my throat because I knew him so much as a child, and we watched him in our household. So those are my thoughts on Coach Big John, and I'll share my thoughts later on Chadwick Boseman. But equally, you can imagine that the emotions run deep for me for Chadwick Boseman because I was coaching baseball with my sons when the movie 42 came out, and it opened up discussions with them about race, about being a black man in America, about history. So when I said earlier in the show, deep emotions running through, I was not playing when I made that statement.
Mm-hmm. When I think about John Thompson, the Hoya paranoia jumps out. And you talk about the early '80s. As a young child, I mean, I can't tell you how much Georgetown paraphernalia I had on. I was such a Patrick Ewing, David Wingate, Michael Jackson, Reggie Williams fan. And when you're growing up playing basketball, you always wanted to be one of those guys out there on the court. For me, playing point guard, I wanted to be Michael Jackson in the worst way. And it was so funny. I was telling somebody earlier today, I didn't know about Georgetown, as a 9, 10-year-old. And I, mistakenly thought they were HBCU just because of the black head coach and whatnot. And just following those teams during the early '80s, those Big East games against St. John's, Syracuse, I tell you, it was just awesome. And later on, when I get to high school, I had the awesome opportunity to meet John Thompson as he was recruiting Othello Harrington, who later went to Georgetown. And I tell you, that was honestly a starstruck moment for me when he, I turned the corner out of the locker room and there was Big John in the gym. And he was a very intimidating presence, 6'10", stern looking. But I tell you, that was a moment I'll never forget. And later on, I mustered up the courage, to ask him about the '85 game against Villanova, and I'll never forget. He said, son, it's simple. They put the ball in the hole a little bit more than we did, and that's that. but I just remember, that '85 game against Villanova. I was torn up. I was such a Georgetown fan, and
Yeah.
to lose to Ed Pinckney that game. Oh man, that I still remember it now, just the way I felt after, because I couldn't believe it. It was just one of those games you couldn't believe, but it was. I tell you, he was such an iconic figure, and like you said, Mike, he was one of those guys, a principled man. You mentioned the fact that he took his players off the court protesting Prop 48, protesting the treatment of Patrick Ewing at the time. I can't say enough about John Thompson. He was just a tremendous individual that you'll always remember. And one of those coaches, you kind of, as a kid, dream of wanting to play for somebody like that.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
without question, CB.
yeah, it's amazing. I appreciate you sharing that, Frank. We always are open and candid, which we hope our fans really appreciate when we bring them that type of information from that perspective. Like you said, I'm gonna send another one of our good friends, Chris Gardner, that does a lot of work behind the scenes for us. Give him a shout out, like you said, how people really have a profound spot when they talk about Villanova doing that upset of Georgetown, similar to Chris Gardner and some of those in the Texas area, I should say. We don't speak a lot about non-HBCUs, or what I refer to as HWCUs, historically white college universities, but that's similar to that North Carolina State upset win over University of Houston for Chris Gardner. I'm gonna give him a little love there, just a little bit, Chris. Don't get too happy, because I know you're gonna be frustrated with that comment. But we'll
Yeah.
put it out there a little bit. But that's to him. But the other thing that you talked about, with some people maybe seeing them as HBCU, a lot of people in the South know about HBCUs, and some people joke on that. Some people take it seriously. But one context that I think is important, I'll kind of borrow something from Nas that he's gone with his new song talking about Ultra Black. One thing that you recognize about the Hoyas that really get you into that black space, if you will, when you talk about it, is just how black and how proud they were when we talk about the context of why you could see that connection. And a lot of that was because of that ultra black, as Nas says in his new song about the pride, in a lot of ways, giving it back up, talking about Chadwick Boseman and his playing of James Brown when he said, "Say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud." So with that, let's bring in guest Isiah Thornton. He's a Texas Southern University student. He was the previous
Isaiah!
intern of this shoot when we were in the
Isaiah!
studio. So certainly want to give him a little love appropriately as we bring him to
Texas
the table.
College.
Yeah. Uh,
Texas College in the house.
so just wanted to make sure that we gave him some love. Every once in a while we get a chance to talk about the people that are running the organizations. We get some privileges to even talk about the athletes that play the game. We had a show where we brought in some young ladies that graduated from FAMU that were starting their own show. And so you've seen us talk to researchers that do about HBCUs. But every once in a while, I think it's appropriate at some point that we honor the students that we work for, especially me as a professor. And so I wanted to give the world a different perspective. We talked with those that are charged with doing the leadership role, like I said, VP of athletics, athletic directors, commissioners, players, coaches. Now we're going to get a chance to share what is this COVID-19 pandemic experience for a student that is in the mix of this from his perspective, to let you know of what does that look like. So with that, Isiah Thornton, welcome to the show. And the first thing I'm going to ask you are, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing really
Good
good.
to have you.
Good to see you guys.
No, I appreciate it. It is good to see you. We talked a little bit back and forth, and I've understood that you got you some equipment as you were starting up yourself and getting your little together, getting excited. And I promised you that we were going to partner up on the show. I'm still going to hold up to my side of the bargain, but I thought I would bring you in early and give you a piece of this and get you a chance to really shine. Give you the piece Ralph has been bring you on to his show. Kudos to the Hall of Famer Ralph Cooper. He leads the way in so many different ways, and he's worked with students from the high school level all the way up to college level, and in between with folks that are trying to find a way to steadfast in career. And that's probably one of the reasons he's a Hall of Famer, because he just does it not quite like none other. And so I got a chance to listen to you on your show, and I was like, what am I doing? Well, I hadn't had Isiah on the show. So with that, let me get right to some questions. As you say, you're doing well. You know, how has COVID-19 affected your vision of school? How was that being able to leave school abruptly, you know, still having to figure out a way to get your classes? And I hope you did well for the semester. And then thinking you were going to have the chance to come back to school, follow some sports, and we'll get in some of the sporting context a little more to give you that perspective. But right now, this is about you. How did all that sit with you? How did you deal with that?
Well, starting with the spring semester, I finished well. I had 4 A's and 1 B. I was really upset about the B, but I was just happy that I passed. So, and then starting this past fall, you can see, because I have a lot of older teachers, so some are in their 50s, some are in their 60s. Internet's not really their thing, but they're getting used to it. They're responding well. They're talking to us well. So, I mean, we're all in this together. We're all working hard, trying to grind this thing out and just get through these next 10 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Good stuff with that. I appreciate that. Go ahead, if you would, Charles, ask a follow-up question, and then we're going to push it to Mike, and then we'll get into some more things. We might have to take a quick break, and then we'll come back. But with that, let me go to Charles. Go ahead and follow up with a question, Charles.
Well, Isiah, talk to us a little bit about what you're working on. We're used to you being behind the camera and setting up things for us as only you know how. But what about the stuff that you're doing in front of the camera?
Yeah, this is different. I'm starting a podcast with Doc, and then I'm gonna start another podcast with one of my friends. But you guys inspired me to get back into the podcasting game, radio game. So over the summer, I went and spent it's about $1,000 for the equipment from Guitar Center. So about $1,000, and so I get 2 mics, a mixer, a board. So now I just need a co-host, and I found my co-host now. So we're gonna start that in about a month.
Oh,
Nice.
So I'll be back. So I'll be in there. You know, I'll be in the radio game with you guys. You know.
So are we talking?
Oh yeah,
HBCU
welcome
sports?
to the family.
What we talking about?
We talk about everything. Music, culture, sports. He's a real big conspiracy guy. I'm not, but I'm just here to listen, you know, on that part. But
I'm a conspiracy guy.
Yeah. You're a conspiracy guy?
Yeah.
So
Mike don't know nothing about no conspiracy. Don't believe that. Mike, go ahead and follow up with your question.
Yeah, so congratulations on your start. It's good to see you, you know, kind of kicking things off. So my question is, you're starting off now, and you're at the ground eye level for, your generation. What do you see? What do you see as the challenges and the next steps for really expanding your platform, given this atmosphere of COVID-19? How do you leverage it? How do you make it successful? And what's your plan to kind of tackle some of those challenges, given the current landscape that we're in?
I think it starts with just getting your resume together. I guess people in my class right now are looking at this COVID deal as we can't really go outside to interview folks, but we've been challenged by our teachers to go and make these videos happen. So in my case, I'm doing broadcast journalism, so we're challenged every day. Hey, go get a story, go write this story, do something productive. So I guess my generation, we have to be more productive. So this is my senior year. So my senior year right now, my goal for 2020 to 2021 now, just be very productive and have enough enough, as you say, work, or enough real to try to change something in the space.
Wow,
Gotcha.
I love it. That's what I preach, man. And I love to hear that, and I'm glad to see that you're focused on, you know, landing your spot and making your difference of how you see that to be, which is perfect. With that, this is Dr. Ville inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. We'll come right back right after this short video break, commercial break, if you would, with Isiah Thornton, Texas Southern University student and previous intern of the show. We'll give some shout outs to those that are following us on Facebook Live. Appreciate all our viewers out there. Hope you appreciated the open part of the show, and we'll get back to make sure we get you some of those shout outs because I know y'all going off. I'm reading what you're doing on Facebook. We appreciate all the love and the sentiments and the comments. Keep them going. Keep sharing with everybody. Get the information out there. We appreciate you. With that, we'll take a short break, and we'll be right back with Dr. Ville's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab radio show.
Yeah. I love my HBCU. And boy, I love it, love it. I love it, love it. I love my HBCU. And man, I hope my team they won one. Yeah. I hope my team they won one. Yeah. Man, I hope my team they won one. I hope my team they won one. Yeah. I tune into the HBCU Sports Lab to see if my team won or lost. If they lost, I'm quiet as a mouse. But if they won, keep tab. I'ma do the dab, yeah. Dr. Cavil, he know what he be talking about. Mike and Charles, they know what they be talking about. They compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they won or lost, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson. Yeah. I love my HBCU, and boy, I love it, love it. I love it, love it. I love my HBCU, and man, I hope my team they won one. Yeah. I hope my team they won one. Yeah. Man, I hope my team they won one. I hope my team they won one. Yeah. I tune into the HBCU Sports Lab to see if my team won or lost. If they lost, I'm quiet as a mouse. But if they won, keep tab. I'ma do the dab, yeah. Dr. Cavil, he know what he be talking about. Mike and Charles, they know what they be talking about. They compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they won or lost, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson. Hot.
Well, you know how we do it at HBCU game, man. You know what time it is. You already know. Play.
Turn down. Turn down for what?
This is Dr. Ville inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Just wanted to give you a little update of how we continue to bring the greatest and latest to you. We're interviewing with Isiah Thornton, Texas Southern University student and previous intern of Dr. Ville's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. He's currently working and interning with the legendary Hall of Famer, Ralph Cooper, with K-Switch 1230 as he gets it done there. That video was just an update to let you know HBCU Gameday and its flagship television show, No Huddle, is back for season number 2 on Aspire TV starting this Sunday, September the 6th at 12 noon, and that is Eastern Standard Time. Check that out. Your boy will be on there as a SWAC analyst, so you know I wanted to make sure I got some love out there do it as your boy continues to try to step up. I'm trying to get it done, big guys.
I see you, Doc. I see you.
With that, let's get back to Isiah. I want to just get right to it again. Isiah, what are your thoughts? What was the biggest news, HBCU sports news of the year for you from a student perspective? What all the things that went on, HBCU sports, what was the biggest news to you? And if you can do it, you can give me your top three if you want to real quick. Start from number 3 and then go to number 1. Or if you just want to give your biggest number 1, you can give that. Either one.
Let's see. Number 3, I would say esports. The SWAC announced esports for, I want to say 2021. They announced
Correct.
that, I believe. So yeah, they announced that, and just today they opened registration. So I got my Xbox controller. I'm ready. I'm ready for the padding. But they just announced that today. Number 2, I would say, would be, oh man, I don't know. I guess we didn't get to finish basketball season. I was really hoping to bring on bragging rights this year for Texas Southern. I was ready to, to tell Prairie View fans, hey, we got it again, but and so number 1, number 1 was
is that what we're going with? Is that really what we're going with? Is that what we're going with?
That's what we're going with.
If you want some on
this is hit.
So number 1 would be, I guess, the SWAC moving fall sports to the spring. That'd be the biggest thing.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Oh man, that's fascinating. I was surprised that he didn't talk about the FAMU Bethune-Cookman 2021, but that's why I asked you, because I wanted to get a different perspective. And I think you see the generational framework of what goes on, which is good, is to understand what that is, because a lot of people think esports is valuable, but for you, it was so valuable, you put it in top 3, which is fascinating. So I appreciate you sharing that from that perspective. Go ahead, Mike, jump back in. You have another follow-up question?
Yeah. I guess from your perspective, if you look at the landscape now, and looking at your generation, right? What's next for HBCU sports, or what's the next big thing for HBCU sports? You see that you've had the SWAC, you have Bethune-Cookman, you have FAMU coming to the SWAC, okay? You have North Carolina A&T leaving the MEAC. All right, so you have all of this movement, but what's the biggest thing? Because we look at it as movement, but what's the next big thing from your perspective in HBCU sports?
Now I would say branding. We have to know how to brand. Branding, yeah, as a media whole, I'm a creator, so I'm always looking at social media, and I see these big time colleges like University of Texas, U of H, they have a media platform. So now we have to step up as HBCUs into that field and brand ourselves as with social media and all that. And then I want to say bring back some of the gear. You don't really see HBCU clothes in the stores anymore. I don't see that many Texas Southern shirts at Walmart or Prairie View shirts at Walmart. So we have to rebrand ourselves because we have the teams, and now we just need to put it all out there.
So that's what's missing, in essence, really.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
No, I think that's fascinating.
Yes, sir.
Great points you're sharing there. Go ahead, Charles. Go ahead and follow up.
Yeah, well, Isiah, let's throw you in the hot seat, man. You sent the text out the other day. What do you think about Jackson State making the coaching move here, man?
We had to get around to Jackson State at some point.
Hey, we running out of show. We got to get to it.
You know why I was hurt?
I'm taking too much friendly fire over here.
I was hurt because Coach Hendricks asked me, "Do I still have eligibility?" And I got some. I can go and play D tackle right now. I was upset. I can't go to Jackson State and play D tackle now. I'm upset.
Deion Sanders gonna be the
Yeah.
next coach. We seen it.
Yeah,
Man, if y'all
we
don't
go,
stop that.
we gonna get into a little more of that about Jackson State. Big news. There's no way that you can get around it. We're gonna get to it. Last question I have for you before we get to take a deeper dive into that. But the last question for you, Isiah, before we allow you to go. Appreciate you taking your time there. But I really wanted to ask you in regards to Chris Paul, Oklahoma City, formerly right here of Houston Rockets, is when he actually debuted the HBCU gear that he was wearing when he walked into it, then when he was at Houston Rockets, the Toyota Center, with Texas Southern gear on it. Everybody was like, hey. And he has grown that and worked towards that. And since they've been in the bubble, we noticed, obviously, and it's lit the internet ablaze with his representation of HBCU gear. It even more so is Jordan Brand sneakers that he has used the logos and names of several different HBCU programs and literally covering all conference, some independent programs up from Lincoln, Missouri, all the way from CIAA. Went back there most recently this week, come through the SWAC, obviously the SIAC, the MEAC, and some of the independent programs such as Hampton, Tennessee State, and FAMU gear on. So he's representing quite a bit in different angles. Alabama State, and when we talk about Rob Calloway, and I'm not sure he'll be able to join us today, so just wanted to give him a little love, what's going on out there. But with that, what were your thoughts about Chris Paul and HBCU and Jordan Brand sneakers?
I like it. Last year or 2 years ago, when he was a Houston Rocket, me and Taylor York actually interviewed him at the Rockets facility at the Toyota Center. And even then, he told us he was a big time, his family was a big time Winston-Salem State alumni. So they all went to Winston-Salem State, and he chose to go to Wake Forest. So he's always wanted to be a part of HBCUs. His family, it runs deep with his family. So he just, I'm glad he puts his brand on the line and shows us a lot of love. So it's really nice to see. Yeah. I wish I could get those Texas Southern shoes if he got some Texas Southern shoes. But it's nice to see that he has a platform of his own and he puts it out there.
No problem with it. Now I sit that as a fastball because I knew you were gonna hit it out of the park, and you did because of the chance that you had to do that interview. And I just wanted the world to know that you're putting in that work to get a chance to do all that. I'm extremely proud of you. Can't wait to hook up with you as the professor and the student as we create our podcast about driving the narrative in a different perspective, which in a lot of ways is going to keep me young and up to date and speed in a lot of ways of what's going on. As you jumped out there and talked about your top three with SWAC and esports, just shocking to everybody in so many different ways. So anything that you want to have as your final comment, and we'll let you go.
Final comment. Wow. I don't know. I just want to thank you guys for bringing me on. 2 years ago, I got to tell this story now. Doc invited me to the show to shoot a commercial for him. And so when he sent me the address, he sent me the wrong address. So I drove all the way to his mailing address. It was like a UPS PO box. So I'm outside the UPS box. I done text Doc. I said, hey, Doc, I think I'm at the wrong location. I'm at your UPS mailing address. And he goes, oh, just come back next week. My bad. That's on me. So I had to say, I went from Texas Southern to Pearland and came all the way back. And I just stuck it on out. I've been here 2 years. That's a little bit of
haze. That's what you got. Welcome to the family.
You catch that little haze.
Yeah. I made sure later that I gave him a check for the commercial he did. So I gave him a Christmas gift, which is a form of the check. And a little bit, he know that was a little bit of payback for the extra gas I had in going out that way. But that was hazing to make sure he was serious about his craft. I had to test you. And that's the story, and I'm sticking to it.
That's right.
Yeah, clean it up. Clean it up now, Doc.
You know I will. You know me, Mike. I got to. He got me out here on front seat. Good story, Isiah. We'll talk a little bit on class. You better be glad you're not in my my course this semester because you would have. Never mind. You know, we call it that F squared. You know, they told you about that F squared. You're gonna get that F squared in your life.
Mm.
No, great story, great job. Continue to do the great work. We're proud of you, and we'll talk to you soon, Isiah.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Enjoyed it, Isiah.
Thanks, Isiah.
With that, let's get back into it. Let me give a couple of people a love, and we're gonna get into that Jackson State
Yeah, we got to
commentary.
get into this Jackson State because man,
Uh,
CB is right. It's going off. It's going off the chain online.
yeah, we're gonna do it. We'll talk about it for about 5 minutes, 7 minutes. Then we're gonna do a close to our radio segment with the video with Chadwick, and then we'll come back with some closing thoughts. And if we're not finished with the Jackson State dialogue, we'll be able to carry that over for the next 15 minutes after the top of the hour for a little bonus coverage for those that follow us in the studio. But we do want to be respectful to the studio and make sure we close at the top. So with that, let's start off with Jackson State does not renew John Hendrick as the head football coach. So we're going to give it straight to Charles to tell us what's going on. That's his backyard. If he can't tell us what's going on, we in trouble. So since that's what you want to talk about, go ahead, Professor Bishop.
Well, and I'm going to read a statement from Athletic Director Ashley Robinson in consultation with President Hudson, and after a thorough review and evaluation of all aspects of our football program, I have decided that a change in leadership is in the best interest of our program and university. I want to thank Coach Hendrick for the hard work that he has done with our football program. I wish John much success in the future. And Dr. Cavil, I want to start off by saying, first and foremost, John Hendrick, a tremendous individual, a great guy, very classy in victory and defeat. Always answered every question, and he was always available for whatever questions that we had of the program. So I also want to wish him good luck on his future endeavors. And just, from looking at this, you have to allow Ashley Robinson to bring in the sort of individual that he wants to take the program to new heights. And I know there's a lot of frustration right now around the Jackson State program. This is, if I'm not mistaken, since 2007, I think the 6th head coach. And that's a source of frustration for a lot of Jackson State fans in terms of this SWAC championship era, not being able to get back to the pedigree program that Jackson State has established from the 60s through the 90s, 16 SWAC championships and one in 2007. So the fan base definitively wants to get back into the upper echelon of the SWAC, and these sub 500 years, I've had to allow for Ashley Robinson to bring in the person whom he thinks might be able to take this program to different heights.
Great point, and I think that's appropriate. I'm going to jump right in here. Instead of asking you to follow up and comment on that, I'm going to spin in and ask you the second part of that, and then I'll go back with Charles to see if he has any comments on this. You heard the statement that Deion Sanders would be the next coach, and then all of a sudden he would not be the next coach. So both were out there. Mike, what are your thoughts on if this would be? Would it make sense to have Deion Sanders as a coach? What's the pros and cons to it? Do you believe what's out there that he is or he isn't? What is your take on all that?
No, if you look at, as much as hoopla and attention as it brings, you don't know if he's the right coach or not. I'm not on the ins and outs of Jackson State program. You don't know if it's the right choice or not. I know that he was there this past week, coaching a high school football game. Trinity versus MRA.
Madison Richland Academy. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I don't know if that's the right move. I think it brings a lot of attention to the program or not, but whether he's the right coach or not, I think Ashley and his team are doing their homework. They're going to bring the right coach in for the right situation. And I'm not sure if Deion at this point in time is the right coach for the right time. I don't know if he, it's all about relationships. It's all about matchups. It's all about bringing the right pedigree to the program. And you have to look at that before. As much as the big name sounds good, and several statements have been mentioned that it was meetings with the Jackson State folks. There was no recruiting. There's no intent to hire Deion. So it's been made crystal clear in several statements that he wasn't brought in as a candidate. But if prime time comes to your place, you got to meet prime time. But the rumors will flocculate. So
Right.
I don't
Right.
think I don't.
Right.
So I don't know. CB can probably allude better than I can, much better than I can, what's best for the Jackson State team. The only thing I would ask is kind of the questioning. Hendrick, he's been there since 2018, so that's 2.5 years. Did he have enough time? And why now? Why now at this point in time? That's the only question I would ask. He's a quality guy, great coach, as you alluded to, CB. So why now? Why at this point in time? And if not, who's the next potential candidate out there? Realistic potential candidate out there.
All valid
I think that's a
questions.
great point.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Charles.
No, go ahead, Doc. No, I was saying all
Yeah.
valid questions in terms of whether a name like Deion Sanders is actually the right person. I'll be honest. At this point, I don't know what is right. I do realize that that the Jackson State fan base is a little different. Mike, you mentioned he was there for 2.5 years, and you will have people who say you need at least 4 years. But this is a fan base that will get up on you real quick, and it's a knowledgeable fan base. And I was talking to a buddy yesterday in terms of the culture around Jackson State and the city of Jackson. As kids, we grew up, 7:30 game, by 2:00, it was time to start getting ready. And by 4:00, you were at the stadium tailgating, and easily, 40,000 people in the stands. This is a city that revolves around that team. When they're doing really well, it is a boom for the city of Jackson. So I think I'm at a point where I'm not sure who the right person is. And trust me, I got thrown out a whole lot of names yesterday.
Let me get you to put a pause on that. Let me get you a pause on
Sure.
that because I want to get to this video. And then we're going to pick that up because I see the passion, because I know there's two things that are really dear to you. I don't know which one came first, that you as a Dallas Cowboy fan or a Jackson State University fan. So I'll say it both ways, Jackson State University Tigers fan or a Dallas Cowboy fan. Obviously, over the years, as you come up, now Alpha Phi Alpha is a big fan of that in terms of fraternity, Texas Southern University, and Prairie View by extension in terms of that. But we know where the love is, especially when they play each other, where that goes. But with this, I want to take this time and play the clip, as I promised everybody, with Chadwick Boseman graduation speech to the end. And we'll close up on the top of the hour with our KSOH 1230 side of the radio. We'll bring back after that the last 15 minutes. You'll catch us. We'll give some shout out for those that follow us, some comments you have, and thoughts on the video, and then close up on Charles' final thoughts in regard to Deion. So if we can, go ahead, let's play this video clip in terms of Chadwick Boseman graduation speech by Howard University.
Finally, I thought of Ali in the middle of the yard. In his elder years, drawing from his victories and his losses. At that moment, I realized something new about the greatness of Ali and how he carried his crown. I realized that he was transferring something to me on that day. He was transferring the spirit of the fighter in me. He was transferring the spirit of the fighter to me. He was transferring the spirit of the fighter to me. Sometimes you need to feel the pain and sting of defeat to activate the real passion and purpose that God predestined inside of you. God says in Jeremiah, I know the plans I have for you. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. Graduating class, hear me well on this day. when you when you have reached the hilltop and you are deciding on next jobs, next steps, careers, further education, you would rather find purpose than a job or career. Purpose crosses disciplines. Purpose is an essential element of you. It is the reason you are on the planet at this particular time in history. Your very existence is wrapped up in the things you are here to fulfill. Whatever you choose for a career path, remember the struggles along the way are only meant to shape you for your purpose. When I dare to challenge the system that would relegate us to victims and stereotypes with no clear historical backgrounds, no hopes or talents, when I questioned that method of portrayal, a different path opened up for me. The path to my destiny. When God has something for you, it doesn't matter who stands against it. God will move someone that's holding you back away from a door and put someone there who will open it for you. If it's meant for you, I don't know what your future is, but if you are willing to take the harder way, the more complicated one, the one with more failures at first than successes, the one that has ultimately proven to have more meaning, more victory, more glory, then you will not regret it. Now, this is your time. The light of new realization shines on you today. Howard's legacy is not wrapped up in the money that you will make, but the challenges that you choose to confront. As you commit to your past, press on with pride and press on with purpose. God bless you. I love you, Howard. Howard Webb.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. This is Dr. Ville inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop, signing off KCUH 12:30 a.m. with Texas Radio Hall of Famer Ralph Cooper. As we said right here in Houston, Texas, we're going to give you a little bit of bonus hour, 15 minutes. On the top of the hour, we'll give you a little bonus. We will not have Rob Calloway as we do it, but I hope that resonated with you that really resonated with me in a lot of ways. Got a chance to play that for my son as well, and the impact he had. So a little bit of that's me talking to my son. So I'm doing this show in a lot of ways through him, for him. And so that's more of that dedication. Before we get back to it, want to get out, shout out. I hope the folks like the new updates that we're making here with Stan Hardy, Israel Holmes, getting it done. Jimmy Wilson, Lawrence D. White, Anthony Weston, representing, obviously, Prairie View Grambling, Alabama A&M. We have the venerable Brian and AD of Sports Rap right here at BCSN. Download your app. Check out their show. They did a brilliant show over the spring sports just about a week or so ago. Go check it out if you hadn't seen it. Brian's teasing you there, Charles. He talking about prime time. Prime time. Prime time will be in Jackson. Jimmy said online at Amazon. He getting it done. Come on, Charles. Sound like you want Deion at Jackson. He said you also sound like you sitting up here with Gotti. John Gotti in terms of who you working for. So you just never know. Chuck Hunt is up there giving some love. Chris Tucker, William Davis, Wendy Jenkins Bishop, the better half. She laughed at that hazing that I did with Isiah. And so she was tickled about that. Shout out to them and the first responders and liners, first people getting it done out there. What she does, we appreciate her. Much love. Jason Cable getting in here, getting us some love as he gets it done in the SWAC office over there. And that's Dr. Jason Cables for those that don't know. Make sure you put respect on it, as they say. Belinda Johnson said, powerful. Willie Alex Hines says he loved watching W.C. Gordon teams on BET back in the day. Chuck Hunt says, I
Wow.
watched many of their games on BET, also watched them in person. I met Coach Gordon. He is a nice guy. Before I do that, let me just let you all close out with that segment. Give your final thoughts on the commencement speech. It was longer than that, but I thought I really wanted to play that as he ended it. I thought he ended it just perfectly. And as I said, it was amazing to me how much he was pouring into those students, those faculty and staff that was there, the president, administration, and personally for me, just was pouring into those that were watching. And something tells me he was actually pouring into himself, looking back in some way as his experience as a student there, walking those halls, those hallowed halls, the hallowed ground in that area, doing homecomings and all that kind of stuff. But then getting to pay it forward, and he was talking about himself in his fight that we found out that just recently that he was fighting during that time. So, Mike, what are your thoughts?
Man, I think you really hit it. I watched the whole speech again on Sunday night, and there's another story that he gives. We didn't have the clip here about the hilltop at Howard University, and he said it's the hilltop because where he lived was at the bottom of the hill, and he gave the name of the street, and I forget the name of the street, but when he said the name, it reverberated. All the students laughed because he said he would have to bring all of his books up because if you didn't bring all your books, he wasn't going back to the bottom of the hill to that street to get his books. And he was talking ultimately about struggle, through the 4 years, standing in lines to meet somebody who didn't know somebody who then told you to go meet somebody else. And we've all had those HBCU stories, and he was able to capture the imaginations of everyone in the audience. But if you listen to him struggle, and he referred to the chapter in Nehemiah, I know the struggles I've laid out for you. I've laid out plans for you. I kind of wonder, CB and Doc, if he had something, if he was really talking through it to himself in addition to the students as well. In hindsight, it was really a I don't know, gut wrenching moment, and I had actually tears kind of welling up because it was a dynamic speech. But if you listen to his words, I kind of wonder if he was talking about himself in addition to the students. And if he knew about his conditions, because he talked about the struggle. He talked about the minute where he cross-referenced with Ali across the campus. But that hilltop story, if you ever get a chance, go on YouTube and hear the whole entirety of the speech, and it is very, very dynamic. But
Great
such
point,
a
Mike.
dynamic young man. So
Yeah.
the other thing I will add is that at the end of it, you see various texts, various tweets where there were folks questioning what's wrong with him at the end, not knowing the story he had gone through. They saw him, he had lost weight, they had known his struggle. So to me, that's a lesson. Don't criticize anybody until you know the struggle that they're going through, because he was very quiet about this. And there was several tweets showed up, well, what's wrong with him? What's he doing? That kind of stuff. And I won't go into the negativity, but I mean, very, very positive and very, very, very gut wrenching.
Yeah.
Yeah, great point. Great point. As you said that, go ahead, Charles. Please follow into your thoughts on that final.
Yeah. I mean, kind of following up on Mike, and one word that kind of comes to mind when looking at Chadwick Boseman was very transformative, a transformative actor, and one of those actors that you look at and you're in amazement because he gets it. He every performance you kind of walk away like, wow, that was a performance. And it's not too many people who can do that. Chadwick Boseman, obviously, Denzel. For me, a guy like Delroy Lindo, another actor who's passed now, but Adolph Caesar. You know, just actors who that you kind of walk away from the movie screen like, wow, that was a performance. So, and everything that I saw Chadwick Boseman in, be it 42, 21 Bridges, the Five Bloods, out now on them, just tremendous. And you come away like, this is a great loss, just from a human perspective, but also from the industry of paying your money to watch a great performance. So we're definitely going to miss it.
No doubt about that. I really appreciate y'all sharing your thoughts there with everybody. In terms of that, I did want to go back a little bit as you were giving some thoughts on Jackson State, Deion Sanders, the move for a new football coach, the history that was tied in that, and how important it is. I thought that was contextually extremely important, so I wanted to give you a chance to make sure you got to finish your thoughts on that. Before you did that, as I showed everybody this shirt, and one of the things I'm working on is potentially what will be a history, HBCU Sports History segment that you'll get a chance to view in some capacities. And so we'll talk about that a little later. But what this shirt is, Howard University won the Colored Basketball World Championship in 1910 and 1911. People may not realize the history that people are probably really familiar with the Negro Leagues and how the Negro Leagues obviously was the leagues where African American, black players, Negroes as they call the colored terminology, but black people played. And I say black people because it wasn't just African Americans, it was actually those around the diaspora, particularly when you talk about the Caribbean areas, Mexico, when you talk about Afro Mexicans or Afro Caribbeans in terms of that and what it looked like, and even Afro Canadians in a lot of ways in terms of that side of the world. Played in the Negro Leagues. Around the same time, though, you had what you call Black Fives or the Black Cagers, which is where you find similar to the Negro Leagues, but these are African Americans, blacks that played basketball. It was mostly in the East Coast where you see Major League Baseball coming out of and then spreading through the Midwest and finally to the South, obviously. But you probably have heard about the Harlem Renaissance, Harlem Wrens. Later Harlem Globetrotters to that, which actually moved to Chicago, which is a whole nother story, but more in terms of the Black Five, where there was a team that was known as the Washington 13th Streeters, which is the name of the street of the YMCA, which they were housed, which were obviously connected. And a lot of the players from Howard University, many of them were grad students in the Howard medical schools and stuff like that, played for the basketball team. This ultimately led to the athletic or the formal foundation of the athletic department with the basketball team in terms of Howard University. And they went on in terms of this configuration, which is different than what we see now, to win that championship. You also have the Lincoln University that was part of the Black Fives in terms of HBCU as well as Hampton University. And they were important in terms of the foundation of what would become the CIAA later, obviously, Howard University's program. And the rest is history. Just to give you some historical framework about how all this really turns together and comes and wraps its hands around that. But back to Jackson State, as we're not going to let you off the hook in terms of that. As you were doing such a wonderful job of explaining yourself. But seriousness, when you talk about Jackson State University, one of the things I was doing on another show, Block Sports, with Michael Jefferson, was explaining the nuances and the challenge that you see with programs that had success for extended periods of time. You know, we had programs such as Prairie View A&M that had a great deal of success in the 50s and 60s. Morgan State that had a great deal of success in the 50s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, for that matter, up to the 70s. Grambling State that has had great success over periods of time, starting mostly in the 70s, 80s, be able to extend it to the 90s along with Jackson State during that period of time. And then Southern a little later in terms of what they were able to do which culminated a lot with Southern and Jackson having this rich history with Jackson State, Alcorn State thrown in there, and then some other programs were able to step up here and there, Texas Southern, Prairie View, and then along with Alabama A&M and Jackson. But with the expansion of the SWACs moving from more public institutions away from the private institutions in the late 40s, 50s, with all these HBCUs coming in, talking about Texas Southern, Jackson State, Grambling coming in their 50s. Right after that, Alcorn State, ultimately Valley, Pine Bluff leaving and then coming back in with Alabama A&M, Alabama State in the 80s, now FAMU and Bethune-Cookman. I was making a statement that it's going to be a much more of a challenge for the sustained success. I'm not saying that Jackson State can't have championship level success, but he was also harkening on the days because he was looking at some of the records of coaches that weren't having success. No doubt about it. I can certainly see where changes were made in that way. But he was talking about undefeated season, 1-loss season, 2-loss seasons, and the coach getting fired, 7-4, 8-3. And I was like, look here now, you playing FBS games, which are not games you're supposed to win. So looking at these 10-2s, 11-1s, undefeated seasons, are short in between. Not to say that you can't give them, because we've seen it recently with North Carolina A&T, very solid, being able, but you got to be very strategic about the FBS you play in terms of what that means for money games and how that looks in terms of evaluating your team. And I say all that not to say that a move shouldn't be made and the expectation for Jackson State should not be high. I want to make that clear, that all our programs should be high. But my point is that organizations, institutions wins championships. And for Jackson State to be rightfully where they think and in a lot of people's minds should be, it's going to be about everybody at Jackson State and in that larger community getting involved and doing what's right and best for the institution such that they can get to that pinnacle, which, as I said, now is going to be more difficult than ever starting in 2021 just because of the competitiveness of this conference and sports all around. So I just wanted to share my thoughts on that as I allowed you to jump back in here with some additional thoughts to give you the total framework that I think you speak with of why that you are emotional about this and excited about this opportunity. We're, concerned about this opportunity, but you understand the magnitude of what this means in terms of what this can do for this program and overall, but particularly for the sport of football, where so many fans are excited about, rightfully so, of where Jackson State they believe should be and certainly could be.
Yeah, I think you touched on it in terms of it's going to be a much more difficult in today's landscape, if you will, of HBCU football, especially when you take a look at Florida A&M and Bethune-Cookman coming into the conference. But again, and I say this in terms of the Jackson State fan base, the expectations will never change. The expectations were, there will be if the team went 7-4, there will be hyper analysis of the 4 losses, and that's just the way it is. And I've grown up with those expectations. You understand them. You understand, and Dr. Field, like you said, maybe one of those losses could be an FBS opponent nowadays, but maybe the other 3, if they happen in SWAC, you're gonna hyperanalyze the why and what was the game management. And this is and I joke about it all the time, but the Jackson State fan base is an extremely smart fan base, and me and a buddy was joking about it the other day. Somewhere in that 6 to 9 game sort of outlook of what that coach brings, people have formed their opinions of what Jackson State is going to be, whether that's right or wrong. But that is the culture of the program. So my sincere hope is whomever it is that I think for once the infrastructure is in place now at Jackson State to make a hire that I think that the fan base can galvanize behind.
Certainly. This is Dr. Cavil with Inside HBCU Sports Lab. This is THG. Sponsoring today's show. THG Agency is a company that provides sporting and educational consulting data analytics. With that, Mike, want to get in your final thoughts of the show Then we'll let Charles get in some final thoughts of the show today. And I will just say this, as we talked about Chadwick Boseman, obviously John Thompson, but in that Black Panther framework, as you're talking about, Charles, I think it fits. The framework of that is heavy is the head that wears the crown.
Yes.
And so you're actually right. When you go
Yeah.
in a program that has great expectations, there's going to be a lot of things that are beautiful about that, a lot of things that come with those accolades. But there are a lot of expectations based on that history and people, where do people want to go? And that's great.
Hmm.
And it's supposed to be like that. But heavy is the head that wears the crown. And you have an
Very much so.
opportunity, as I always say. You have a great opportunity. And I am waited with bated breath to follow how that will work. With that, Mike, your final thoughts in terms of today's show. You got a little Amber
Yeah.
Alert out of Atlanta, Texas.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Atlanta, Texas. So, yeah. So the first thing, as I put on my, my John Thompson towel, I think I rephrased the words of Chadwick Boseman out of the biblical book of Nehemiah, and I've laid out the path before you. I've chosen the path before you, and Chadwick. If you go back to his speech, he had the opportunity to do a role which would have been a stereotypical role for African Americans. He actually turned that down and was criticized for turning that down. He was known for choosing iconic roles or roles that portrayed African Americans in a great light. John
Hmm.
Thompson actually took a stance. He could have been at Georgetown and not taken the stance to defend his players, to not speak out against the NCAA, but he chose the harder path, which it was in Chadwick Boseman's speech, taking the harder path. Both individuals took a harder path. It took Chadwick Boseman a little bit longer to get recognized because he didn't take those stereotypical roles, or he didn't. And John Thompson in the early 80s actually took a stance against the NCAA when it wasn't kosher to do, when it wasn't easy to do so. He stood up
Mm.
bold. And so to me, this show goes to their life, their path, their decisions, their leadership, their iconic roles to me. And it means so much to not only the folks that grew up watching them, but to the generation that follows them. It means so much in so many different ways. So that's what I want to leave the audience with. Now, John Thompson was not an HBCU coach, but in every sense of the word, he was an HBCU coach. In the
Yeah,
way
yeah.
he acted, the way he protected his players. If you look at the umbrella, if you look at the stable of players that came through hit Georgetown, yeah, he was an HBCU, probably had a PWCI, but he was an HBCU coach, in my opinion. That's an informal opinion. That's just Mike's thought. But he was bigger than a coach. He was bigger than life, just like the article on Game Day says. So those are my thoughts, and those are my thoughts toward Chadwick Boseman, such an iconic player. And I reverberate the thought: do not question what a person's going through until you know their struggle. So
Mm.
I
Well,
turn it
well,
back
well
over to you,
said,
sir.
Mike. Well said. Let me let Charles Bishop come in here and give his final closing thoughts as we get prepared to close up the show. I did want to give credit to Ken Rashad in terms of both articles he wrote in terms of Jackson State University, as he stays on top of it, going both ways, whether
Hmm.
it's Deion yes, Deion no, and breaking and getting the information out. I said HBCU broke some news, but getting the information out, breaking it to some degree with texts that were going out there in regards to Jackson State not renewing the contract. Hendrick there, Coach Hendrick there, in terms of what's going on. But what are your final thoughts overall of the show today? You can go in any direction. It's your time. What are your thoughts, Charles?
Well, very appreciative, Dr. Cavil, for doing a show like this where we show reverence to an actor like Chadwick Boseman. and the great legend John Thompson. Mike, you couldn't have said it best. I almost looked at John Thompson as being an HBCU coach because his players had that sort of almost HBCU type reverence for his discipline, for the men that he turned them into. So that was a very poignant analogy. But Dr. Ville, to do a show like this, it was a tough weekend in terms of finding out the news about a tremendous actor like Chad Boseman, and then to lose John Thompson this past Monday. Appreciative for you giving us the space to really reflect on the life and works of both men. So kudos for this type of show.
Yeah, thank you very
I,
much, Doc. In
I,
case I didn't mention it as much, thank you very much.
oh man, yeah, it's my pleasure. I wouldn't want to do it with any other brothers, and I mean that brothers, not just in terms of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. We will throw that out there, but in real life, this is friends and family. This is a brotherhood for us. So we do this. We extend that brotherhood and sisterhood for those behind the scenes. Roy Evans, in terms of what he's doing, BCSN. Download the app. Check out the other shows that we do on BCSN that he does. Another one in terms of sports, but there are many shows that you can check out. Just go download it, see what else the content. If you enjoy us, you can imagine what else is going out there. Obviously, with Brian and AD, with Sports Rap, what they going on, Cicely, what she's doing out there in terms of Cicely Parsons, doing a lot of the work behind the scenes with writing the script. Also in regards to Chris, as he does a lot of production work for us in terms of off the paper and getting it done. Also want to give love to G Boom Holly. Many of y'all know him by Raymond. He does a lot of work with us in terms of making sure we're getting the information out there on Twitter. In terms of that, you can follow us on that at Inside the HBCU Sports Lab 1 to catch us on Twitter. You can also follow us on YouTube in regards to keeping up with us as he does a lot of the work along with Chris in terms of making sure we get the information up so y'all can catch it, as well as the podcast version we do on Spreaker. So check us out. We're doing all that and more. As you see the new updated framework, hopefully you like that. You'll see more to come as we continue to push forward and get better. I am Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, the Dean of HBCU College of HBCU Sports with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. As we come to a close, we hope you enjoyed the interview with Isiah Thornton, Texas Southern University, former intern, current student, as he's getting prepared to graduate and go on to bigger and better things. Again, we thank you for listening to Dr. Ville's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop, every Tuesday at 6 o'clock right here. We look forward to next week as we discuss the latest news in the lab. Follow me, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Dream big and continue to move forward. We will talk with you soon. Course lecture
Dismissed.